Dude, it is a religion. We have literally created the best of like an Old Testament religion. I mean, if you think about it, honestly, like I'm one of the high priests of the religion. You know, I wear funny clothes. I talk in tongues. I speak in words that people don't really understand, right? And we've disempowered people enough to think they have no agency. So they come begging for the little miracle. Help me do this, help me do that. And so we write our little prescription and send them on their way. And then when they come back and they're not better, what do? We blame them, just like any good religion. You didn't follow the rules, but you didn't do it. But we never told them the rules, right? We didn't show them the rule book.
Welcome to Entrepreneurs in Recovery. I am so grateful that you're here. Today we have a very special guest, an episode that I'm going to get into. But before I do, once again, I would love for you to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And also, if you wouldn't mind leaving me a review on Spotify or iTunes, this just simply helps people reach the show. I don't pay for marketing. I share with my following that I have, which is just consisted of many organic followers, and it's not very big. So if you can go and support the channel and support this podcast in that way, I'd really appreciate that. So let's do a check-in. How are you doing today? I hope you're doing well. Today's guest is Dr. Randall Evans, and I'm really excited about this episode because there's so many questions I have personally about the medical system, the medical industry, doctors, and psychedelics. And Dr. Evans is the founder of PsychedelicMD, and it's actually called PsychedelicMD. And he is someone that is, I would say, an expert working with thousands of individuals in the medical professional world, particularly doctors, when it comes to helping them understand psychedelics. What a beautiful gift this episode was for me to be able to ask all the questions I was curious about, because let's be real, many people really look up to doctors. In many ways, sure, they should, but they look up to doctors to guide them into health questions and even healing questions. And so as we're seeing things evolve in the spaces of care and also safety and healing, we're seeing people like Dr. Randall Evans appear, and I'm so grateful I had this conversation. So I'm going to leave it at that. Enjoy this episode. Let me know, leave some feedback if you enjoyed the episode. Enjoy. Hey, Randall, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jesse. It's really a pleasure to be here. I appreciate your patience. Let me find my way here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm really excited to have you on the show for many reasons. We met through Tricycle Day, so their email list. So shout out to Tricycle Day. I love
Absolutely. Henry, what a great job.
Yeah. I mean, that was just, I saw that right up in their email, and I was like, I've never reached out to anyone on Tricycle Day, but I was like, when I saw the write up, I just knew right away. I'm like, I have to reach out to this person, Randall. And I reached out, and you got right back to me. We got on a call, and here we are. And I've, before I jumped on this recording with you, I listened to your podcast episode with Ease Forest, and that was really enjoyable, really personable. And so definitely going to bring in some of the new insights I've learned since we've talked about you. Sure. But yeah, just welcome to the show. Glad to have you here, and I'm ready to dive in if you want.
Absolutely. Thank you. Let's do this.
So I always like to start off with, you can go as deep as you want, but I like to start off with, like, how did you become Dr. Randall Evans? Like, how did that start? And then how did that bridge into the work you're doing that we're going to dive into here today?
It's a good story. So I grew up in northern New Mexico, up in the mountains, and so deeply immersed in a lot of the indigenous cultures. I spent my childhood running around the canyons, finding pottery shards and pots and whatnot. But it was in Los Alamos, which is the home of the national lab. So my father's a PhD astrophysicist. So it was kind of like a walking in two different worlds. You know, there was the indigenous kind of natural world, and then there was this very much logic, science-based world. So it was kind of an interesting childhood. I went off to school and got a degree in computer engineering. knowing I wanted to go to medical school. But I was like, I don't want to be that guy who's got a biology degree and no future because I don't get into medical school. So I thought, well, computer engineering, and turned down a job offer from a relatively new startup company called Microsoft. So at the time, just never take financial advice from me. That's the take home message. But took a year off and started a computer science company doing image analysis stuff, and then went to medical school, and then went to Boston and did all my training up there, and did ultimately certified in pulmonary medicine, critical care, and sleep medicine, and then stayed long and did lung transplant stuff for a while.
You were at Brigham and Women's, right? Because
Yeah,
my sister-in-law I've known for like 25 years. She actually works there and has worked and works there now and is in Children's Hospital. So, anyways, there's a connection
absolutely.
there.
Yeah, so that longwood shuffle, that was what I was doing. And then I moved to South Carolina, initially in the upstate, and then finally moved down here to Hilton Head probably 25 years ago, and started a practice down here. So I was at a private practice. I had one partner who was in Savannah, but we were just kind of overhead sharing, but set up a practice. I was in practice by myself for 4 or 5 years, on call every night for 5 years. And had a son who was a year old when I moved here. And by any metric, I should have been winning at the game of life. I played the game by the rules, and had a great practice opportunity. I was making good money, had a house and wife and a kid, but it just wasn't the dream I signed up for. It literally came to this point where I was like, man, this is something has got to change because I'm dying here on the vine. And kind of tried the traditional stuff, went back and started exercising, lost weight, and went to therapy, which was ironic because my wife at the time was a therapist. But honestly, like, I literally put the word out to the universe. I said, man, I need a guide. I need a teacher, something. I need some guidance here. And found myself actually in some overheated apartment in Savannah with some kind of aged Bay Area hippie wannabe playing his didgeridoo, and had my first experience with the holotropic breathwork at that time. And that was truly transformative. It really was. And that was, I had so many questions. I didn't know where I was going, and I had that experience. And little did I know at the time, that was my first true natural psychedelic experience. But that experience, I was like, man, I don't know the answers, but I know I need to know more about this because I think my answers are going to be there, wherever there is. And that set me off on an intentional journey. Certainly I'd consumed probably more than my fair share of psychedelics growing up, but never with any intention. So did breath work. I took a deep dive into the breath work stuff for a year or so, and then actually ended up studying with the Keto shamans in Peru, the energetic wisdom shamans. And around that time, really got the call to sit with grandmother with ayahuasca. And that was 10, 12 years ago. And when I sat with her the first time, I was like, man, I'm home. I really felt like I was at home. And so I undertook to study that medicine and that world with the same dedication and same, just like I did the Western medicine studies. And so I spent years traveling back and forth, working with various ayahuasqueros and maestros, and ended up working with a beautiful teacher, and spent about a 2-year apprenticeship. And all along, my driving thing was I've got to find a way to bring this to my brothers and sisters in the medical world, because it's just for lots of reasons, but that was a big part of my motivation. And so continued to do both up until coming up on 3 years ago when I sold my medical practice, and I've been doing this full time since that.
Yeah, that's what a story to unpack. I mean, that's just wow. There's just your courage and bravery too to venture into the medicine path, do the breath work, and then going to a big master teacher plant like ayahuasca, and then like going all in and like doing the apprenticeship and really diving in. And I know when we talked before, you mentioned that ayahuasca showed you that doctors are part of the problem. So
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, I would like to kind of talk about that a little bit. What do you mean
Yeah.
by that?
Well, because I was in the middle of a journey, and I was like, I was having my relationship with grandmother. It's like, how do I, like, what's keeping us from bringing this wisdom to the world? Because as long as it's in the shadows and still has that little voodoo stink about it, nobody's going to buy into it. And she was very clear. She goes, you guys, the healers, the doctors. And I was like, it took me a moment, but the truth is, for better, for worse, rightly or wrongly, we can have that conversation later. Physicians in our culture still have that something. They carry that trust and that veritas about it. And so, if you get physicians behind this, then all these things that are standing in the way tend to go away. So it's an incredibly powerful voice to be able to integrate and to share it. If you get a bunch of doctors out there saying, yeah, this is what we need to be doing, then people go, okay, good, let's go do that. So for that was one reason. The second was because, again, as a group, physicians, they're amazing people, but they are a weird group of folks. They don't play well with others. They don't take care of themselves well. They don't know how to. They don't know how to take care of each other. And so there's this resource of these healers. And no matter what you say, the vast majority of folks that are in healthcare are there for a calling. They're not there to make the quick buck and easy deal. And it's a calling. And so it was so frustrating to see so many of my colleagues that would come in and their energy is good, they're ready to go, and just gradually get beat down, right? And they lose that flame, they lose that spark, and then you watch them try to regain that spark by things that may not be so healthy for them. But so we have this incredible resource that we're not caring for, that we need as a society. We need these people. 50% of physicians in training meet the criteria for burnout. I mean, that's absurd. It's absurd. Folks, the physicians that meet the criteria for burnout, they have much more problems with patient bad outcomes and difficulties. I mean, it makes us not be good doctors. Like, I know the impact that working with these medicines made on my practice as a physician. I was a much better physician. I was much better equipped to hold space, handle difficult situations. And I spent my life in the ICU. So there were multiple messages in there from grandmother that, yeah, we got to get the doctors involved. And so that really has been a big focus.
I have this thought that has come to me in the past based on conversations I've had with family members and different individuals. People, and I'm not saying all people, many people put doctors on a pedestal, to say the least, meaning it's not even just like, it's beyond medical, in my opinion.
Right.
Like, it's almost like godly status doctors have. And so, and I know this firsthand. I've talked to many people who will not listen to anecdotal evidence and will not listen to the studies that are barely there for research, and especially into psychedelics, but many things in health. And I'm curious, with with that said, like, how how that's such a big responsibility. If people are putting doctors in that category, and then how to it's like, so when a doctor says, hey, do this, people do that. It's almost like a religion in some ways.
Dude, it is a religion. We have literally created the best of like an Old Testament religion. I mean, if you think about it, honestly, like, I'm one of the high priests of the religion. I wear funny clothes. I talk in tongues. I speak in words that people don't really understand, right? And we've disempowered people enough to think they have no agency. So they come begging for the little miracle. Help me do this, help me do that. And so we write our little prescription and send them on their way. And then when they come back and they're not better, what do? We blame them, just like any good religion. Right? You didn't follow the rules, or you didn't do it. But we never told them the rules, right? We didn't show them the rule book. And so it is really it's a dynamic that needs to disappear. Like, one of my dreams, one of my goals, my focuses is to be the disruptor, to disrupt this current perception of our medical model. And I could bore you with like how we got here, and it's kind of an interesting story, but it needs to it needs to go away for so many reasons. If you're interested, I'd love to riff on this a little bit, because I think
Go
it
ahead,
does
Griff.
give some.
When you said disruptor, that's my favorite word. Positive disruption is like my two favorite words as in these spaces. Yeah.
So, it used to be that we died primarily of infections, right? Occasionally be an accident, tree fall or something, but basically infections. That was the Grim Reaper. We had nothing to it until, the mid 1930s, when from plants, we were shown this thing called antibiotics. And then suddenly we had a pill that could literally get rid of our biggest fear, the grim. Then we didn't have a conversation with that before that, but now suddenly we had this pill, and it truly was a miracle, right? And so it's like, wow, that worked. Let's study some more, make another pill and another pill and another pill. But that changed the entire psychology, the entire dynamic of health and healing and the relationship, because now we as doctors, wow, we became the gatekeepers to that, right? It was truly a religion. The religious icon was the pill, and the dynamic became very much of, don't worry, we got this. Like, no, we're the keepers of this. We'll grant you access, and you come see us, and we'll give you this little pill. We'll manage this for you. So it fed into that ego thing for the doctor thing. That's an awesome place to be, and it worked, right? It continued to work, but it really is, it's not a healthy system for lots of reasons. Number one, we've disempowered people incredibly. Like people don't think they have any ability to heal themselves, to manage themselves. It's all been externalized, right? Then if you look at the pharmaceutical companies, which people like to make them the bad guys, but in fact, they're just doing what they're supposed to do. They're doing what we've asked them to do. They do a very good job of it, but that's what they do. And it was funny, I was talking about something they did. It's almost like finding medicines is like mining for bitcoins. Like it used to be really easy, right? Medicines, blah blah blah, bitcoins, but increasingly it's taking an incredible amount of resources to find that last maybe something that's gonna. In fact, we're almost inventing diseases so we can have a cure for it. Like, you palm sweat too much, look, we got a cure for it, right? And it's just this crazy dynamic, but we're running out, right? And none of those things are actually healing anybody. You know, it really it isn't working that way. And so I have these conversations, and it's fascinating, the psychedelic space. Up until very recently in the pharmaceutical industry, if they were developing a new compound, if it showed any hint that it might possibly have any psychedelia to it, it just wasn't. Nobody looked at it anymore because that was the big taboo, right? But with this kind of opening now, that industry is looking back and they've, oh wow, there's this huge collection of all these bitcoins. Of course, we're going to go mine that and jump into it because, I mean, there's lots of good reasons they work. There's literally millions of years of human studies behind it. Like, it is truly this gold mine. But the whole problem is that if we allow psychedelics to get funneled into the pill part, we're going to lose everything about them, because they just, the one thing I love using psychedelics as a disruptor to point out the fact that this does not fit in the old paradigm, right? Like psychedelics, working with psychedelic medicines, plant medicines, it's a participatory sport. Like, you have to be involved in your own thing. And that is so important. And so I love this intersection of psychedelic medicine, plant medicine, and the old world. And so again, disruptor, my whole thing is to blow that whole system up. It needs to change.
Yeah, and I love how you brought up Bitcoin because, you know, you're watching the world say, no, we don't want digital assets and we don't want to go that direction, to, oh, we have to now. It's just, people have spoken. And
Right.
it's sort of like that with the reemergence of psychedelics in many ways. That's one of the reasons. There's many reasons, but there's this disruption happening, whether the government or medical industry, it doesn't
Right.
matter. It's here.
Right.
And that's the whole thing. Is that's why we're having this conversation. It doesn't matter if you're like against it or for it. It's here. People
Right.
are doing it in massive numbers. And
Mm-hmm.
now there's some adoption happening. So, and so what do you see with the actual medical system integrating psychedelics? Do you think we are 6 months out, 6 years out? Like, where are we at with the integration of psychedelics? And then I want to come back to, what is that going to look like too? Is it going to be just pill, pop in psilocybin without the the actual trip?
Yeah, no, this is so important to me because it has to be integrated into the medical world. I'm working with another guy writing a book, psychedelics for physicians, like just the basics, because you know what, doctors, you have to be ahead of your patients. They know more than you do. People go see their doctor and they want to talk about ego death. They don't want a recitation of the 1969 Controlled Substance Act. They want to have this conversation. Do you think psilocybin would be good in this situation? Like, they need to be conversant, and they're not. It's not their fault because we weren't taught that, and which brings another rabbit hole. Like, why were we never taught about psychedelics? Like in the Goodman and Gilman's, which is kind of the industry standard psychology textbook. Like there is nothing in there. So there's so many different, we can go deep into conspiracy theories, but there's lots of reasons why we are where we are, all of which need to be undone. So to your point, like, do we need to get it? Absolutely. We need to do that in a mindful and in a intentional way. You know, I'm gathering a group of physicians that are like myself that come from a strong academic background, strong clinical background, have personal experience with this, and when trying to form a core of what I call psychedelic MDs that become the voice, the clinical medical voice for psychedelic medicine. And my real dream is that starts the beginnings of a new medical specialty, psychedelic medicine. I mean, it has to be. And so it needs to be honored and held with that regard and esteem. So we're exploring how do we get this into medical curriculum in medical schools? How do we get this word out there? How do we create a group of physicians who understand them as they need to be understood and hold them in that regard and continue to pass that information along and prevent them from being lost into the big pharma culture or jam into a pill, take it 1-3 times a day and hope for the best? That we will lose. We will lose it. Like a psychedelic safety to me is, and we'll talk a lot about this, is safety for the guest, but also safety for the medicine. We have to protect the medicine. So,
yeah. Man, I got so much is coming through me when you're talking, because we're hitting on a lot of points that I haven't been able to bring up with prior guests or many people.
Mhm.
And one that's coming through right now, and I look behind you and I see the eagle, and that's why, because the indigenous wisdom. So, you know, we have this model and this renaissance that's happening, and, you know, let's be honest, it's not because of this indigenous wisdom per se. It's really because there's, like, you know, when we look at the opioid crisis, why did we start paying attention? Is because many people of my skin color started to die with affluent wealth, and it was like, let's put this to the forefront. Now the politicians are losing their children to the overdose epidemic. So it's like, now we're paying attention. And so, and how do we keep, in your opinion, the indigenous wisdom, the mystical experience, which I hear wants to be taken out of the synthetic versions of these? And I understand the need for synthetic. We can definitely go there. But how do we keep that indigenous wisdom, that mystical experience, as this thing gets fully adopted into the medical system?
So, and that's a huge thing, because there's a big intersection. You know, I'm kind of invited to this psychedelic safety summit, which is in March, and they're like all the big boys. You know, the various administrative players, the FDA, the VA, all they, let's become a roadmap for psychedelic safety. And my whole thing was like, yes, let's safety for the psychedelics themselves. And so part of it is a lot of education, you know, and understanding and helping people understand that this is not something you just take a pill. Like our mentality for medications now is, I have to take this thing and it has to be completely transparent. I can't have any knowledge that I took it. And if I do, that's considered an untoward side effect, right? Like the Lycos trial, you know, yeah, I think we should be having different conversations about why it failed. And it should have failed. I'm glad it did, but I think it's an important conversation to have, because it brings that very point. This stuff does not work as in the typical pharmaceutical world, which is one reason why it hasn't been developed like this, because it's such a disruptor for that model. So I think, to me, we have to have voices like us that get out there and as many different ways as we can, and get the attention, get seats at the big table, and say, no, you can't make it go away. Like Anthony Black is a wonderful physician researcher. He was the first author on a study that looked at PTSD in physicians who were in the midst of the COVID thing, and the effect of psilocybin on that. Right. So I've had some great conversations with him. He's an FDA, funded researcher, and he's like, no, this has to be done set and you cannot strip it away. So you find influential voices that have the ear of the people who can continue to save the mystical, the ancient wisdom. That's part of the ancient wisdom, is understanding how to work with these medicines and how these medicines work. You know, healing is not something you do to somebody; it's something you do with somebody, and it doesn't. It seems like a small change of perception, but it's the world of difference. And so, again, I think it takes a tremendous disruption of the medical model that we have. That's why I'm stepping into that, because I still speak doctor and I want to blow it up. But we just need as many people as possible to prevent the massive momentum of it slipping into the big pharma. Let's make a pill, send it out, and away we go. Everybody loses in that case.
Yeah, and I know that's a big discussion, and I'd love to have another big discussion about that question and bring people on the show and have that and include you in that conversation, and maybe that's a future episode.
I'd love to.
Yeah. And I think so I'm curious, like, it's like I just interviewed someone who was 22 years in law enforcement, and we were talking about the stigma of just not even psychedelics. We're talking about the stigma of just sobriety, taking care of your mental health in law enforcement. So now with you, I want to ask the question: what is the stigma like when it comes to doctors, MDs, physicians, nurse practitioners, all of that, when it comes to psychedelics and what the work you're doing with teaching these medical professionals how to
Yeah,
intervene?
it's really been interesting because when I was doing both, I was deep in the world doing the ayahuasca stuff in the ICU out every day. There's so much interest and curiosity, but physicians are pretty old school. They drink the Kool-Aid, and so there was a lot of like, oh, but never was it a pushback. It was like, oh, tell me more. I'm interested. And they, some would want to come bring me this little study that said it didn't work, and I go, oh, that's great. We can have a conversation about it. But in general, most folks in the medical world are very curious people, and they're intelligent people, and they're trying to do the right thing. And so the only pushback I've gotten is kind of self-imposed because I don't necessarily, how do I put this? Not everybody in the world is as accepting of what I do from the legal perspective, but from the medical perspective, like I started this thing on LinkedIn, and it blew. I mean, 4,000 doctors that tune in, and we do daily content stuff, and I do like calls and stuff, and so there's a tremendous amount of interest and curiosity, but a lot of reservation, like how do I do this because I'm afraid I'm going to put myself at risk, my future, my licensing, my job. I don't want to put that at risk. And so that's really the intersection of trying to help people navigate that space, because I really want to learn more, but it's risky, and I don't want to threaten my livelihood, which I absolutely understand. So
Yeah, that's so important. I mean, everything has led up to this moment interviewing you. Like I have had people, I have met amazing doctors and psychologists, and they have medical licenses. And they say to me, Jesse, I would love to come on your show. I'd love to talk about my experiences into medicines, but I can't because I have a medical license. I'll lose it. And then I get someone on the show like Dr. Dana Lerman, and she's just like doesn't care. She cares, but she's just like openly talking about it. Started a business, Skylight Psychedelics, and she's a disruptor, right? So you have someone like that who's just like, hey, I'm here to talk about this, and I I'm really excited for what you're doing, Psychedelics MD, and being able to build a community so people in the community can be like, oh, okay, I have someone to be guided by. I have other people, my peers, to talk about this. So can we like talk about more of? I'm very curious about your way of doing that. How does that work? How do you get? How does it work when you work with your?
so it's obviously it's been a journey, but so at first I thought, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a physician only retreat in Costa Rica, and physician only, so people don't worry about they can just be physicians. It can all be very safe, and we're going to do some journeys, and couldn't get anybody to sign up at all. I was like, So did a little pivot and started this LinkedIn profile, and my thought was, I just want to create a safe space, for healthcare doctors to hear about it. They don't have to participate. They can be involved or not involved. They can be sit on the sideline and just watch, and that's fine. Just get the word out. And I was talking to my wife the other day, and I was almost in tears because I was so blown away about how much that meant. Like we literally created this safe container, and so many amazing individuals would come out and want to share their story, their personal story. Oh, I suffered from depression my whole life. I was on this and that, and I finally found, psilocybin and blah, blah, blah. Never had they had an opportunity to share that with anybody, right? Because it just wasn't. And so then you start getting this out, and then you start giving them permission to say, hey, let's talk about this. And so I started having these Sunday dinners. Like I would just like, let's grab a group of folks and join in. I'll pay for dinner. Let's zoom in and we'll just sit and talk. No business. It's not an agenda. It's like, let's just share. And so giving people permission to have the conversation, to ask the questions in what is almost a container has been such a tremendous thing. And I was so blown away about how well that turned out. And it's just been so amazing, continues to be. And so that's then led to all these other things. Like I talk about this book that I'm writing. Well, I met that gentleman through the PsychedelicMD. Oh, yeah, we've got the same thing together. Where do you want to go with this? And so they make these connections, and it just kind of builds this network that there's no way we would have ever been able to find each other because everybody's off in the corner. Like, I can't really talk about this. And so a big part of what I wanted to do is like, man, I'm going to stand out there with a big sign on my chest. Yeah, I'm a doctor. I do psychedelics. I want to talk about it. I will take the heat. Yeah, let's do this. And that gave, I think, first off, it really hit a wire because people are like, holy shit, that guy's actually doing this one. I would love to be able to do that. And that resonated with a lot of people, pardon my French, but it resonated, right?
Yeah.
So that got a lot of interest. And then it got a lot of excitement. And people were like, I want to learn more. And it was because they had that interest and that curiosity, but they were still stuck in the stigma land. And so that's really fed all of this. It's really, really been miraculous.
Yeah, it takes one, right? It takes one to stand out and, take all the arrows and the flack and
Yeah.
everything that comes firing at you. And then,
I get people going, you've been high your whole career. I can't believe it. I get the haters. I'm like, great, you're thinking. I'm glad you're thinking. Like, please, more comments because it means you're engaged. One way, shape, or form, you're engaged. We'll have a conversation about it. So,
yeah, and if they're saying it to your face, that's a good thing. If they're actually like criticizing to your face, because they're definitely doing it behind your back. So to your face, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, thank you. I'm learning. Here's what the questions are. Here's what the counter arguments are. Oh, wow, thank you. You're making my brand, the things that I'm doing that is ultimately for service to the niche that you're in, doctors, and having, and not just doctors, but, the medical industry, the medical health professionals. And
because that one guy who had the courage to write me that, he obviously spoke for a lot of people. There's lots of people that have that same idea, thought, feeling. So credit to him for having the courage to reach out. And I'll always engage with him and have a dialogue and say, yeah, let's chat about this. I'll give him the truth of where I was and let's address where you're coming from. I understand your fears and concerns and being high, but let's actually dig into this. And those become your strongest supporters. Like when you have a chance to go through this and they kind of see it, they go, oh, wow, because they had the courage to step out and speak for the others. So I applaud everybody who does that.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's very inspiring to be having this conversation and to just know that there's people out there like you that are addressing the shadow. Like this is a big shadow of the medical model, the industry, all of it, to address like basic healing. Like, yeah, we're treating symptoms. We know that. Okay. Everyone knows that now in 2025. It's like, all right, there's been enough people triggered by what happened during COVID and what's happening now. It's like, all right, yeah, like what are some modalities that we could actually get to the root of a lot of these conditions? And how does big pharma, how does the industry still stay alive? We can't just, it's just like crypto, right? You can't just come in and all of a sudden turn everything into digital assets overnight. The new administration's just going to go to the new golden age of crypto. It's not going to happen like that. So, it's going to take time, and we're working on it. And this is the steps. We're taking the steps towards it. And I mean, I wish it was just like my old addiction days. Like, yeah, I want it instantly now. And this is, but you're addicted to that. The people that are addicted to the golden age being tomorrow. It's like, yeah, I want that too, but we have to slow it down and we have to make sure.
And I think you make a really, really good point. Like we cannot demonize the pharmaceutical industry. They are not the enemy, right? We've created that because we bought into it. That we as a group, they're doing exactly what we've asked them to do, and they've done tremendous things. Now, does it necessarily mean that they should be in charge of the bus? No, I don't think so, right? So I think you can work like people have concerns about how do you do clinical trials and psychedelics. I go, well, when I was back in the Harvard days, I did clinical studies on lung transplant stuff. And it's like, yeah, you can do large clinical trials where these drugs live. You can do this in ceremonial spaces. You can do this and still have the scientific rigor, still have that. It does not have to be a sterile lab room, but like there are ways to do this and we know how to do this. It's not a new problem, but we just have to maybe help people see that and go, no, actually we can do that. We can bring the scientific rigor that we need without destroying what we're trying to study.
Yeah, I mean, like I was thinking, the studies that are coming out about 5-MeO DMT with depression, anxiety, potential with addiction, alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
We have studies about psilocybin and alcoholism, smoking cessation. We know there's evidence there. It's really fascinating to see where these studies are coming from, and some of my peers are involved in some of those studies.
Mm-hmm.
It's really exciting. I'm looking at right now this ketamine, let's say some would call it an epidemic, but other people would say this is an opportunity to heal. And I'm in the camp of it can be extremely beneficial and healing done with the right guides, the right professionals, and the right doses. So yeah.
I
So what
love
is
that.
your take on this? Let's go into this because I have people who are medical
Mm-hmm.
doctors, psychologists that want to start ketamine clinics. They reach out to me and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
they're reaching out to me because of my experience with utilizing that medicine. But what is your take on the whole?
Yeah, and this is a rich one for me because yeah, I knew a lot about ketamine in the ER and the ICU and the OR. That was ketamine, right? K-hold to some folks in the ICU, but that was. And then 2019, 20, it started getting a name for treatment-resistant depression. Compared to ECT, the shock therapy, and it was much better. And then COVID comes, and then with COVID, the DEA changes the rules about how we can prescribe controlled substances. Like used to be attempted face to face. COVID, now we can do it remotely. Opens up the whole world for this at-home ketamine therapy, right? I again did not view it, didn't understand it until I really decided I need to know this, and so I really went and studied it, experienced it, and understand it as a psychedelic. One of the real powerful things with ketamine, a couple of them. Number one is it's familiar, right? It's an FDA approved drug. I call it like the gateway psychedelic for physicians because nobody's scared of ketamine because we know it, right? So it's not as big a step of like joining me and doing the ayahuasca thing. And so it's an accessibility thing. Dosed correctly, and that's the really important point. Most people that dose ketamine aren't familiar with dosing it to the psychedelic ranges. They're the standard kind of stuff. And so you need to have a competent guide physician understanding how to do that. It does have potential downsides, but don't all of these. But when done intentionally and correctly, I think it has an incredibly strong place in this. One of the physicians I'm working with is Nick Schiavone, who's an anesthesiologist trained at University of Colorado, and he's a wonderful guy, great clinician, one of the good guys, and he's very much a ketamine wizard. And so he and I have been talking a lot about ketamine in the hospice near death kind of place, because that's something I've always wanted to do is bring psychedelics into that space. But it's been really hard to dose psilocybin in the world where ketamine has the benefit of having lots of different ways you can dose it, administer it. It really fits in that world. And so I think it has an important role in it. I think it got a big boom because of COVID. And then obviously you get somebody famous who has a difficult time with it. It's going to start bringing out the noise with it. But just like any of these medicines, one has to have a deep understanding of it to be able to speak about it. So just opening up a ketamine clinic doesn't do it. Yeah, there's a lot of people that pour medicine. Not many people serve medicine, understanding the difference, right? Yeah, I can set up a ketamine clinic and infuse it, but is that really what I need to be doing or not? So
Yeah, that's a really big concern of mine. Is there's health practitioners opening up ketamine clinics and then um, they don't have experience with
yeah,
ketamine. And
or
that kind
psychedelics,
of
or this whole space, or any of it, right? And it's
mind
like,
blowing.
yeah, it blows my mind. Like you don't understand. It's like you have no experience in psychedelics or this medicine or this whole process. I don't know that you should be opening up a clinic personally.
Especially for those like me that have done, I wouldn't say a lot. I guess some would argue that, but I've done really big medicine. And
Yeah.
when you have done really big medicine, you when you go into a different medicine, sometimes the medicine you did that was, let's say, for example, 5-MeO DMT will come into a high
Absolutely.
dose ketamine experience,
Absolutely.
will come into a psilocybin experience. So,
Mhm.
do you think that someone who has never even done the ketamine that they're serving in their clinic knows anything about that? No. And that's what's so important, because if I'm having that experience, which I have had under a
Mhm.
nurse practitioner's care, I've had this crossover experience
Mhm.
where my 5-MeO experience came into the ketamine experience, and it freaked me out
Absolutely.
because it was like, the death before death again, which I didn't want because I was thought I was on something different.
Mhm.
And again, this was all supervised. This was all done in a clinic. And the thing is like when I had that experience, I couldn't share that with that person because, and it's like, I'm not blaming her, but it's like, I can't share my integration
Mhm.
experience with the person serving me. So that brings up another thing is integration. So
Mhm.
how do we really bridge the gap there when you talk about psychedelics, doctors, medical professionals? They come in and they go, okay, you know what? Randall, I went to Rhythmia, I drank the ayahuasca, I'm back now. You know, what is it? Well, first of all, is there an integration ecosystem in what you're doing, or how do you help doctors for the integration process?
So that's a huge, huge point because again, this is not just a carnival ride. Like the whole reason we're doing this is to take the insight, the wisdom, whatever we've learned from that experience and somehow bring it into this experience and this reality for some reason. Like this is not just to go have an experience. So we have to, by definition, find a way to bring that from there to here. A, no question about it whatsoever. Like the second thing that's a challenge is you've had this experience. When I am in the medicine, you're aware, and your wisdom, down like trying to come and talk about that, almost impossible, right? It's ineffable because you're trying to take the infinite, the boundaryless, and you're going to chop it up into words, and yeah, I'm going to lose something. So it's so important that you're working with somebody who has that kind of shared experience. Like, yeah, I know where you've been. I have an understanding. Let me help see if we can make some sense of this. So integration is so, and it can't be, oh, I had a group Zoom call 2 weeks after my retreat and we all sat around and studied each other and go, how you doing? I'm doing good. That's not integration to me. So there are lots of different models for it. Like I've had a wonderful, wonderful woman on our um, in our newsletter who is a PhD clinical psychologist. I know her father. He's a medicine brother. We served medicine together. She's one like she's written a book. Like she has one of those deep understandings of this, and so we need voices like that. That it's not just I went on the 6 week class to learn how to integrate. Like truly understanding what we're trying to do. And there are some very good models out there, but everything's so disconnected. And so a big part of what I'm trying to do is say, let's gather all these folks up into a big tent and say, listen, how are we going to do? What do we need to do? What does it look like? Let's actually break this down and get down the woo-woo land and say, listen, how do we actually need to do this? Like, what are the steps? And create some consistency around that because my whole thing is safety and psychedelics, like this whole thing I'm doing before, during, after. Well, if you're not taking care of them afterwards, you're dropping the ball. So there's some interesting models and ways to integrate that, but it is really the 600-pound gorilla in the room because we have to get a handle on that. It is truly one of the places where we don't do folks justice most of the time, I think.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me that I can go and I can do ketamine in many, many states throughout the United States
Mm-hmm.
without any integration. I can go and get IV ketamine,
Mm-hmm.
a massive dose. I can do 6 sessions for thousands of dollars and have zero requirement for integration. But yet we have these studies coming out about ibogaine,
Mm-hmm.
MDMA, and it's like, oh, red tape everywhere. You have to have 8 weeks of
Integration.
integration. It's like, what is going on? Why is ketamine different? Why are we doing so? What is the? How do we like get to some sanity here, where it's like, what, like, it's just like it makes you think about like what many people say. It's all about money, and we know it's not all about money. And like, what? Why is there's so much red
So,
tape?
So I think that the ketamine can slide underneath because it's viewed as a drug. It's a prescription. It's not held in the same space as ibogaine or something. Nobody looks at that like as a psychedelic. Right? In the general public, if you talk to people, what's ketamine? If they've heard about it, they don't look at it as is ketamine like LSD? Oh, hell no, right? But so I think there's a perception issue which allows it, or maybe I don't know if allows is the right word, but it kind of sneaks around underneath. Then you get these other ones like ibogaine and whatnot, and you can already start seeing when I was talking about it, them being kind of boxed into the pill deal. Like, oh, ibogaine is for addiction. MDMA is for PTSD. Like this cubby hole in it, which is I think a disservice to it. But the integration piece, and I'm not always sure where that comes from, because like where's so much energy about that integration with happening? Like where's that coming from? Why is you don't see that with a lot of the other plant medicines? And so it is an interesting thing, and I'm not exactly sure I've got a handle on whose agendas behind why some this, some aren't. Like they all should. I don't understand why we can parse and piece them up. I mean, a profound psilocybin experience needs integration. I'm sorry, it just does. If it's going to be used as a medicine and to get its full potential, which is obviously if we're not doing that, we're doing a disservice not only to the medicine but literally to the indigenous wisdom, the thousands of years of folks that have brought us to the point to be able to work with these medicines. If we don't work with them the way they're, I want to say designed, but you know what I'm trying to say, that then we're doing a disservice to everybody who's sacrificed so much to get us to this point. So to me, they all need to be held with that respect. So I agree. I don't understand how or why that's coming to be.
I'm curious too about, I interviewed Clay Martin, who is a special ops veteran, amazing story.
Mm-hmm.
And he, shared about his journeys with psilocybin and his fears. And his fears were, if I go and use a psychedelic, what if I act out and reenact the mass murders that I did when I was in the special ops units? And it was a very fascinating discussion. Well, when we talk about doctors and the medical professional, these are like brilliant minds, right? That are probably scared that if they take a psychedelic, they're going to go what? Crazy. They're going to go mad. They're going to lose their gift. They're going to lose their intelligence. What do you see, and what are you hearing about that? Because that's a big argument from people who are not even in the medical professional, that if I go and do ayahuasca, if I go and do peyote, I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to go insane. So how common is that? And is that something how are you addressing something like that?
I mean, honestly, we have witnessed and lived through one of the most effective advertising campaigns ever, right? The stigmatization of psychedelics. Oh, I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to lose my mind. I mean, it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen, right? But everybody kind of carries that fear with it. You mentioned special forces. My son's a Green Beret medic in the Green Berets, and so I work a lot with veterans, and I work a lot with kids. Like kids, I say kids, but they're not. They're young men, and I work with them as a coach and whatnot, and psychedelics, like helping them understand bigger picture things like that. And to me, I really do think like if you can set the groundwork before the moral injury occurs, it's easier for folks to be able to understand and don't maybe have to bring that home. But physicians, they have PTSD, they have moral injury to the nth degree, like soldiers, like police, and so they carry that too. Your point about their fear about losing their mind is exceedingly much bigger in the physician space, right? Because they see them. This is my power, my gift. I don't want to risk that, right? Um, they get stoned, like the person like, oh man, I'm way too stoned. I'm never gonna so like that kind of feel, right? Not that that's ever happened, but
Never.
but it's interesting because I do hear that, but oftentimes just having that conversation, because the other thing about physicians is they are very logical, and so I can tell them, say, look, find me a study where that's happened, and I'll show you 1,000 studies. Wonderful study about this woman who took 50 grams of LSD, found high. 2 days later, walked out of the house, perfectly fine, enlightened, a lot of troubles disappeared. But I mean, like because you literally cannot hurt yourself with psychedelics, and that's the thing that's such an important. Like these stories about, oh, I'm going to get high and jump off a cliff. I don't know. I've never actually maybe not, but it's not an inherent risk to it. So again, my big focus is education, inform and educate, break down those barriers, because those are all stories we've been told that we grew up with, demonizing it. None of it's based in fact, but we've just incorporated into our reality. And it's like, no, it's time to take a step back and just disrupt the stigma, disrupt the ideas, disrupt the medical model that holds it like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a very salient point in this role.
Yeah. You made me think about, so the journey for me now and where I'm at in my life is a journey of healing the nervous system, because
Mm-hmm.
I've done so many other healing modalities, and I realized like, oh, I don't know if that's the final frontier, but the real big understanding for me now is my nervous system. And so when I think about that, when I first utilized 5-MeO DMT therapeutically, I had um, a somewhat destabilizing experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about that experience, which then led to me becoming trained, doing a 1-year training with Five at Joelle and Victoria, with Five
Mm-hmm.
training in Tindava. And one of the reasons I did that is because I didn't want others to be destabilized. So, that's where my ongoing education is going, is understanding my own nervous system so that I can understand why others become destabilized where other people don't. People go and they eat 10 grams of mushrooms and they don't go, it's, or whatever it is, which I don't recommend, by the way. But if the that there's a real also fear of the destabilization, and I've experienced it myself. I got different stories about that. So how how do we address that as well with doctors?
Wouldn't it have been nice if you had said, I want to do this, and I had somebody that you could go talk to who had experience in it, understood the compounds, understood what they did from a medical perspective, from a psychological, spiritual perspective, and actually have a resource to go, hey, I would rather get my information from a learned source than some dude's YouTube video because he had a great experience down in the jungle way, right? So that's a big reason for me to really push this training of physicians, because we need a trustworthy and trusted, well-educated, well-informed, reasonable, balanced resource that we can address this. Because you know what? Not everybody is right for every medicine every time, right? That may not have been the right medicine for you at that time in your journey in life. There's different times, And so having somebody who has that understanding can talk with you and get an idea, and you can say, this is where I am. Say, you know what? I think this might be a better way to start. They open some doors. Like I've had patients that sit with ayahuasca and absolutely nothing happens. Then I serve them psilocybin, and it opens up, and I talk to grandmother. I go, why? What? Explain this to me, right? And she's telling me, well, yeah, I could have torn all those walls down, but they weren't ready for it. They wouldn't have survived it, right? And
Yeah.
that's the wisdom of these places. But psilocybin is different. Little she can work her way through the cracks and reconstitute yourself within. And it's always easier to open doors from inside than bang them down from the outside. And so different people are in different places, and different medicines have different answers. And wouldn't it be nice if we had a collection of people you could go to and go, hey, listen, what do you think would be right? What's the right way to go? They would be supportive and understanding and actually have a depth of knowledge, and you wouldn't be shy about asking. Like, you go talk to them and then follow up with them afterwards and go, hey, here's my experience. Great. Well, listen, I want to get you to see so and so. She's my somatic therapy. She's really going to help you work through some of the somatic issues brought up. Or here's the integration people I think would be awesome for you. Like, why shouldn't it be that way? Why would we not envision that and dream that reality? I don't, and to me, yes, that's where we need to be going.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, you know, the pharmaceutical industry and what you go and get prescribed, like, okay, I have sleep problems. Okay, here's a
Mm-hmm.
pill for that. If I have, so insomnia, or I have an eating disorder, there's a pill for all these different things. Well,
Pills for every ill.
in psychedelics, let's people are wondering, like, why would I do psilocybin versus doing, LSD or something?
Mm-hmm.
And like, instead of it being this war on drugs hidden in the shadows, you're going to be punished. It's like, let's wake up. We're in 2025.
Yeah.
Look at the suicide rate. Look at the veterans that
Right.
are, these studies are emerging about, this success rate of different medicines with PTSD. It's like we need to obviously bring these conversations up. But if we had a library of people who are like, oh, you are experiencing this, potentially LSD would be the right choice. Oh, you're experiencing this. I mean, in the 1950s, Bill Wilson, the founder of
Thank
AA,
you.
was doing
Thank you.
LSD,
Thank you.
and he was
Thank you.
going, "Oh my God, I have sex addiction, I have depression, and now I'm utilizing LSD, and it's so profound. I want to put it into the 12 steps of
Mhm.
Alcoholics Anonymous, and
Mhm.
I want to." And it's like that that data got all burned in the ashes, right?
Yeah.
In the war on drugs, but now it's coming back because it's like,
Yeah.
hey, we can't live in this denial.
Look, people are going to, like you said, people are going to use these drugs. They can use these compounds, these medicines. We are who we are as a human because of our relationship with psychedelics. Like, I really have come to believe that psychedelics are not just some prize at the bottom of the Cracker Jack box of life. Like we are who we are. Like every civilization, every culture, every religion has a deep relationship with psychedelics. Like we are who we are because of that relationship. And to me, they're almost kind of like trace minerals. Yeah, I can do okay without them, but if I really want to be at my best as a human, I need the psychedelics. And we can talk about science that backs it and whatnot. But my point is, we have this relationship with psychedelics. And yeah, we're in the dark ages now, it's kind of opening up, but people are going to seek these out. Let's have why are we pretending and putting our head in the sand and like, oh, it's not happening? It's like, it's happening. Let's get in front of it. Let's talk about it. Let's own it. Let's do it correctly. Let's protect our kids so that they're not getting their information, like I said, from some Yahoo's Instagram feed and getting, like, let's actually be adults about this and go, yeah, let's talk about this and grow up a bit about it. That's kind of where I feel it. So,
Yeah, when you when you've been around a while, you've been around a certain space for a long time, and the spaces I've been around for a good amount of time is um, abstinence sobriety spaces,
yeah.
12-step spaces, different spaces. And when I was at sort of, I don't know, 15 years into the journey of my addiction recovery process, I would have the elders, the people with 40 years, 30 years, come to me and say, Jess, we're losing membership. We're losing attendance in the meetings. What do we do to me? And I'd be like, well, if you want the real truth, it's because you're in a day and age where we went from analog to digital. We are digital society. Like things are changing. And now people are privately using and utilizing psychedelics, microdosing. But when
Right.
I say these things, it's like, well, that's not for us here. It's like, well, it doesn't matter anymore. Like that's what's happening.
Right.
So we need to build more structures of support and, like psychedelics and recovery and the people I've got to interview who are creating these communities because you're getting people who are 21 years old and 25 walking into these structures that and some are archaic. Glad they're there,
Right.
but it's like they're going back and relapsing or they're finding their own path. So let's let's just utilize this information that we're receiving and we're learning that we we don't have like ketamine. Like if I went to Mind Bloom or Joyous and I got my daily ketamine, that's not right for a lot of people. That in fact that could be damaging. Now, for some, it could be helpful. So we need some type of resource or library where someone can go and be like, oh, you know what? If I microdose this dose of psilocybin, potentially with a warning
Mhm.
label, this is what can happen. And this is the guide, teacher, doctor that can guide me in that process that's covered under my insurance. And so this is where we're potentially going. And this is happening. So I think like me bringing you on the show today is about this. Like you
I,
are.
I had this beautiful conversation yesterday with this woman who's a pastor who does pastoral training or the advanced training for pastors in prisons, hospitals about psychedelics in her training. Like she'd had a student. I said, yeah, let's talk about it. Like you have these folks out there talking about end of life big issues, and what's their experience? Like where are they coming from? Like I understand it's powerful, but like the AA thing, yeah, it's an archaic kind of model, and if we really want to kind of be and meet people where they are to provide the help and support where they are, then I think we need to be open up to have these conversations. And why not? I mean, this whole demonization of it is, and it just is fascinating to me. So, to your point, my dream, and I would love everybody's support out there is like, why would we not want to have group of physicians, doctors, whatever, that have the training experience that you would feel comfortable talking to or sending your kid to. It's like, go talk to them about it. I'd rather you could talk to them about, the wonders of the downfalls of weed or this or that or whatnot. And so let's just actually deal with it.
Yeah, let's be real. Like, I can't even talk to family members about
Right.
psychedelics. So, because I have you on the show and because you're a doctor, guess what happens? All of a sudden, they'll pay attention. So it's a
Exactly.
really interesting world and that we're in where that happens. And I understand why. So I'm not like I'm
Yeah.
mad at them.
Mhm.
It's just so curious. So I am fascinated about your journey, this book coming out, and continuing this discussion because it's going to just get way bigger from here. And it's
Absolutely. And I'm really am hoping to harness what you just said. My family, I can't talk about psychedelics, but if there's an MD behind it, suddenly that opens the door for maybe a conversation. And to me, it's so important that I still have my doctor card. I talk doctor, so it's so important for me as a thought leader, disruptor in the space to recognize that and to leverage the hell out of that. Like use that for all that we can. If anything that we can get in the door shifts people enough that they go, oh, well, maybe I'll think about it. Like that's what we need. Like if you can create space for curiosity, that's where the changes come. But with people like this, there's nothing to talk about. But if there's just even a little opening, that's when we can step in and go, hey, listen, let me tell you about something. And now we can start changing the world. So,
Yeah, it's an idea whose time has come. This is the time. We couldn't do it 5 years ago. Now we can.
yeah. Yeah.
And for those that were in it 3 years ago, 5 years ago, that were like, "Oh man, I can't really talk about this." It's starting to shift slowly, and it's with these conversations. So I'm curious, what are you most excited about bringing to reality right now? Manifesting. What is your most highest excitement?
So yeah, so like I said, my big thing I'm really interested in and dedicated to is the safety in this whole space. It is the kind of Wild West. When you're working in the jungle, you don't have to deal so much with the Western mindset and Western diseases and things like that, and so it's a different experience. And when you start bringing antidepressants and things into the world, it creates challenges. So a big part of that is we're just about to launch, and I'm really excited about this. The first, the MVP of what we call Sit Safe, and so this is a platform that's designed, and it will set the standard of care for guest safety, harm reduction, and screenings for individuals that are interested in working with plant medicines and the facilities and the facilitators they're working with. So it's a platform that supports both, does real-time interaction checking for all pharmaceuticals, addresses some of the key medical issues that need to be there, give some thoughts and ideas, recommendations. I'm not practicing medicine, obviously, but it really empowers facilities and facilitators who may not have had the resources to have access to this type of information. So it puts them in the lab. So it creates safety across the board, and just kind of raises the board for everybody. Because the big thing is when there's a bad outcome, right now it's going to be from Marge from Seattle, and so it's not going to be down in the buried in jungle. Like it's going to be important. So we always need to be safe, but it's incredibly important now if we're going to protect medicine, safety to the medicine. We have to do that. So the Sit Safe coming out, I'm very excited about that. And soon after, we're going to pivot to a standalone. So if I want to go do whatever, and I'm not associated with a facility or facilitator, I want to go do shrooms with my buddy on the weekend. Yeah, let's check and see, make sure, easy checklist. Are you safe? Seal of approval kind of deal. So I'm very excited about bringing that out. And watching where that grows, because it does set up a really beautiful platform to integrate information. Guests are coming in, we can provide all kinds of education, information, access to resources. Same thing on the back end, information, access to resource integration type stuff. We can kind of bring it all across the board. So that's been my passion for the last couple of years. I'm really excited to see that come out. So that's one part. And the other thing is this physician education piece, getting that core group of like-minded physicians who have the background and who can stand in this space and have some personal experience with it and some authority to start getting right now it's just me. Psychedelic MD is just me. But soon it's going to be a group of folks so that we can actually have a voice and actually start building what we need on the other side, the education, the medical education, the training, like the other part of it. So those I'm really excited about where all this is going. I feel so incredibly blessed to be in this place right now, watching this unfold. It really is phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you're on fire, and it's really exciting to catch you in this stage. And I'm really excited to also bring you back on the show as the book comes out and as the Sit Safe emerges and your platform expands, to check in the later this year, see where it's all ended up. And
I would love to. I'd love to, because I'll be down where you are here for too long as part of that Sit Safe rollout thing. And so
we'll do it in person. Yeah, we'll do it.
Definitely make that. But absolutely.
So tell people, like, I know you have a psychedelic email course that you offer and all these things, but how can people work with you? How can people find you? And
our website, that's psychedelicmd.org. That's a great place to go. They can sign up for we have a 6-week email course about psychedelics in general. There's a little webinar on there for directed at physicians, but it's more for that. It's like, how do I do this safely, intelligently? How do I find this experience safely? Just some pointers about how to take care of yourself and be protecting that space. On LinkedIn, the profile on there, the Psychedelic MD, is a wonderful place. Like, we put out content every day, and it's just educational content, and we bring other people to come in and share their expertise and openness. You can always book a call. I've got this deal where folks can just book a 30-minute call, and I'm happy to sit and chat and answer questions and just discuss. I also have an opportunity if people want a more formal psychedelic consultation, kind of in line with what we were talking about. Like, let's sit and talk about where you are. Here's what the options are. I'm not going to obviously promote or practice. I'm going to stay with one, but it's an educational exchange that answers that need. Like, where would I go? What should I think? What do you think about this? And just to start that, providing information and education and some guidance. And so you can get on that through my website. And so lots of ways that you can get hold of me. And I love talking to anybody. So.
yeah, you're walking the walk. I mean, I looked at the email, and the same day from Tricycle Day, I reached out to I went to your website. I booked on that free 30-minute consultation. You immediately responded, and we got on a call, and now we're here. So I appreciate you walking the walk with integrity.
Absolutely.
And so with that said, I'm really it's been a real honor to interview today, and, we'll definitely have you back. And it's funny this is another thing that is funny when, as we come to the close, I like to call you Randall, but I also am like Dr. Randall Evans. So like there's this both and and or, and I think, for me, like, I consider you a friend now already.
Absolutely. My name is Randy. That's what
Randy.
I go by. Not Dr.
Randy.
Randall. Doctor is for that other world, and if if I need to get into more. But yes, we're just people here. We're just two men out here just doing our best and showing up and doing what we can do. So
thanks for that. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, and so glad we had this conversation today. And
first of many, I hope, brother. First of many. First of many.
Absolutely.
Be careful surfing, right?
Yeah. I think people are starting to hear those stories. Yeah, appreciate you, Randy.
Anytime, my friend. Look forward to seeing you in person. Okay. Let me know what I can do to support you as you go forward, please. Anything I can do to support you, let me know, please.
Oh, yeah, I will, definitely. Thank you for checking out Entrepreneurs of Recovery podcast. We are so appreciative that you are here. Make sure you go ahead and like and subscribe to the show on YouTube. Leave a review on iTunes and Spotify so more people can find the show. Once again, thank you so much. We have great episodes and content come out in the future. Thank you for being here. Have a blessed day.